Back to the Dice Tower. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Joey Evans.
And I'm Mike Delisio.
Today we're going to be taking a look at the latest from Roxley Games. This is Skyrise, and this game is a reworking, re-implementation of a game that came out quite a few years ago called Metropolis with a YS at the end of that word. This one takes that original design, it changes it up, it shakes up the formula a little bit and brings it back out. Now there's two versions of this game. I'm going to briefly show you in the overview. The deluxe edition with fancier buildings and the whole 3D board and what have you. But we're taking a look here, and I'm mostly going to be showing you in the explanation this normal edition of the game, the standard edition of the game. It is a bidding game in which you are going to be using this sort of spatial bidding idea to claim districts, to gather victory points, collect some sets, and try to, of course, come out ahead. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here we're taking a look at the game setup for 3 players, but to add or remove players, you simply need to change the amount of tokens you put out, and of course these districts themselves. So we've removed this one, leaving the game set up for 3. We've put out the tokens. Every player gets a board and a set of buildings, some of which you begin with, the other ones are in reserve. You've got a couple of secret scoring cards, one of them for a condition that you're trying to achieve on the board, the other one for a color that you are trying to control on the board, such as this one here, says I should try to focus on these brown inventor neighborhoods, okay? So that's what I've got there. And then I've got some cards here that are for my special building that I'll get later on in the game. That's this building right here. So, with all of that set up, a few other pieces, we are ready to begin. The game, as I alluded to, is broken up into 2 halves. The first half is going to be over when somebody, any one player, runs out of buildings. Then we are going to get the rest of these buildings out here, and we're going to keep going until everyone runs out of all their buildings. At that point, we're going to score. You're going to be scoring a few different things. If you complete running out of these, you're going to get the key. You're going to get 10 points. If somebody else does it, they get fewer. You're going to control these islands with the tallest buildings, and you'll get points for that. And you're also going to get victory points for the locations you control multiplied by how many tokens of that color you've collected. But you'll see that they are randomly put out. So if I gain this token here, it'll go there, making brown districts, those inventor districts, worth 3 points to me each. If I keep going, I get 4 points. If I get to there, I get 6 points for each one I control at the end, but then it drops off again. However, if I go above that, now each of them is going to be worth quite a few points. So you do want to specialize when at all possible. That's what those do. These districts out here are going to have a few special features, such as the lakes, the zeppelins, and these towers here, and they matter for some secret scoring. So, general flow. Well, let's say I'm the starting player. I select a place out here that's either in the center or next to a building already out, and I bid for that thing by taking a building, putting it face up in that location like so. My bid is 52. Now, the next player would go, and the next player has to outbid me somewhere, but it has to be next to the last bid, or they could pass, of course. So let's say this player is going to bid this one, and they have to be adjacent to this, so they could go there, they could go there, there, or across this bridge to this one. They bid there. We go to the third player. Perhaps the third player will bid, and they're going to bid on this one. Again, connected to the last one. Comes back to me, let's say I pass. It goes to the other player, they pass. And now this player has won. They're going to leave their building right there. They're going to flip it end over end because the number is no longer necessary. They take this, they add this to their board in the corresponding spot right here, and we take our buildings back. That's done. That player who just won begins a new bid. And again, their choices are they can begin out here somewhere, or they can begin next to something of theirs. Maybe they go right here and they begin a new bid. You'll also notice the buildings have 3 heights. You've got the little ones here. You've got medium-sized ones, which are these. And then the tall buildings, you've only got 3 of those. 2 of them begin over here in reserve. That's going to matter for this scoring. You want to have the highest buildings in each of these islands. These are, islands in the sky, right? So 1, 2, 3, and the middle, it's its own island, okay? So that player will bid. We'll go around once again. The next player bids, and so on. If you win, you're the one who stays there, and you get the token. Now, you know what these 4 tokens do already. They help you multiply you controlling that place, so say yellow, times the score, up above the one you've taken, the highest one you've taken. But there's also other tokens out here. So you've got these letter tokens, A, B, C, D. They correspond to those up there. And they randomly got a value assigned to them. So once you take one of these, let's say, one player takes this one. Let's say I take that. I do so, obviously with following the correct chain rules. As soon as I have a D, I'll put it on there. And I can peek secretly at this one. It is a 5. The possible values are 3, 4, 5, and 8. So knowing that now, I can decide if I want to keep collecting those or maybe move on to something else. I'm keeping that letter there. There's also some that are wild out there, like this one can go into any color you want it to, like so. And then there's also these +1s that are going to score based on how many of the tokens are in this area, i.e. not these or the wilds, but these and the letters themselves. So that is what we are doing. Again, once someone is out of buildings, we'll score the islands and their control, and then we get the rest of these buildings. We're also at that point going to take a look at our 3 cards we were dealt at the beginning of the game and select one of them to give our main building, our special building, a special ability. You'll pick one of these. That thing is going to have some sort of superpower that happens when you play it. It might score. It might let you control with it. It might count as a big building, though it doesn't normally. It might give you some ability, and now you have that building as well. You keep going until everyone's out of those buildings, and you see who the winner is. Now, everything you're seeing here, like I said, is a base game with the standard edition. But if you get the deluxe edition, then that comes with dual layer boards right here, where you can see that this is going to have the tokens rest in there. And you also get a few other things. You get these spaces here. The districts, the flying islands, have this plastic sort of mold, and the cardboard sits within it. And then the buildings themselves, let me go ahead and try to put this here as best as I can. This is also raised up off the board. The buildings themselves are going to be sort of have this nice washed look to them. They are very detailed, and you would put them out with your bidding like so. And once you win, of course, then you'll flip that building over, and it stays out there. They all have their own motif, their own style, sitting out there like so. Very good looking buildings there. And again, these are plastic, whereas these are just wooden bits. So there you go. And a few other things, some gold foiling on the cards, what have you. That's what the deluxe has in it. But that should be enough of an overview to give you an idea of what's going on. Let's go ahead and go back up top. So first things first, let's talk about the look of the game. I always like to start there just because it's the first thing you encounter. And I think the artwork here is superb. I think this is a fantastic looking game. Not just these illustrations, the very Art Deco feel, but also the graphic design, the line work that kind of goes hand in hand with that, the backs of the cards, the style of the buildings. The whole thing screams elegance.
I agree, and that's the thing. The table presence on the deluxe is what I played with.
Sure,
but that really has
even this one though.
Yeah, it has almost a Foundations of Rome style look of it. You're like, wow, I built that type of thing,
Yeah, and I think at this point we can just pretty much chalk up when Roxley comes out with a game that the production is going to be stellar. I mean, they've had too many in a row now to think that they're going to do anything less than a stellar production. There's this follows that trend for sure. It's beautiful looking. The usability is high. The rule book I found to be very clear. So everything from a visual standpoint, I think, is just stellar.
This game has a bit of an old world vibe and mechanisms as well, because I think it does quite a bit with very few moving parts.
Yes.
It has this idea of the bidding, like I said, but the set collection and the simplicity of that, the two-part sort of gameplay, you know, with the first half, getting those buildings out, doing some of that, and then getting the rest of what you have sort of sitting in the wings waiting for you and playing out the rest of the game. There's really not that many moving parts, is what I'm saying.
No.
And with that, it weaves a very interesting web that I found to be very tactical, very engaging, filled with aha moments, at least while you're learning to play.
That's where I was at the first play. You're like, wow, this is a bit too simple. Rules-wise, you're like, okay. But then as you start to encounter those alleyways where you're like, okay, if I just drop here, and you start thinking ahead, that's where the strategy kind of comes in. That was surprising, you know, the first playthrough or three.
Yeah, I particularly enjoy when bidding games get out of their own way with the rules, because a lot of times the game, you know, is really a bidding game, but they put other things in there to kind of lose the focus of what makes these types of games kind of tense. And this game does not get in its own way. You really do focus on how should I bid, long-term versus short-term, tactical, like you said, Z, which I do tend to enjoy tactical games more than strategic games, or at least further on that continuum. So, yeah, the ease of the rule set, the simplicity of the rule set definitely is for a positive.
Now, let me talk a little bit about the original game here compared to this. I don't know, I've played Metropolis. I owned it for many years. I don't know if you've ever played it,
I have
Joey.
not, no.
And Mike, have you played it?
Yeah, I played the original as well.
I like a lot of the changes they made to the game. I really do. I think most of the mechanisms, I would say, are elevated. I love the main. You have one special building that will gain one special ability, and that is fantastic. That is my favorite by far of the new things they implemented. On the flip side of that, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the new way they number the buildings, because in the original game, you had buildings 1 through 13 or whatever.
Right.
And you would bid the same way in a chain. And if somebody last bid a 5, then you need to bid higher than a 5. If your 6 and your 7 are gone, therein is the dilemma. Is this worth jumping all the way up from that 5? Because I don't have my 6 and my 7, I have to go to my 8. Is that worth it? They've stripped all of that away. They now have this massive spread of numbers. And yes, I read the article on Board Game Geek where they explain all the math, and you know what? It just feels like overkill to me. I just didn't see the necessity, I guess.
I like the larger numbers. I haven't played the original one. The larger numbers, it makes you think a bit more about whether you're bidding low or high. Like if you have like all these numbers up to 32, and then after that you have 80 on up, and your middle one is only 55. And it's like, if I ever get rid of that, I'm probably out, or I have to bid my highest buildings. So that kind of adds a little element of trying to figure that out.
You liked it. You enjoyed that mechanism.
I did. Having that huge gap where you're like, I don't want that gap. So that you hold on to that 55 with both hands because you're like, that's the only middle-of-the-road tile I've got.
Okay.
Yeah, Z, I have a feeling that players that are coming into this game first will like the system because that's what they were introduced to. I actually agree with you. I do prefer the old way of doing it just because it felt like it was almost more tense because you had fewer that you were working with. I know mathematically, I'm sure it works the same way, but it just felt a little bit more tense to me in the original than this. But it's not a huge, huge difference.
Overall, though, I think, again, a lot of the new ideas here really are fantastic, and the production, the way this was finalized, it took a long time to come out. I do remember this being announced quite a while ago, but now that it is out, I think it's very well put together, and I, for one, am glad it's finally out and we get our hands on it and can play it and review it. So, Joey, I'm going to toss it to you to jump into some final thoughts. Where are you coming down on Skyrise?
Final thoughts on this one. I really enjoy. I like Roxley. First off, their production is incredible, and this is no different. This one is on the lighter side, I think, but I played this with several different couples and things, and everyone wants to play it again. I'm coming in at 8.5 on this.
Oh, wow.
I really, really like this game because it looks great on the table, and either version, the smaller one and the larger one. But I think it almost fits that gateway feel for me. I guess that it feels that light that I can bring in new people and say, hey, let's try this. It's just a bidding game. So I really, really enjoy this a lot. And again, I think afterwards, any game that has that, wow, we made that. And that kind of has that at the end. It's like, okay, city building, you go, that's it. So I really enjoy this game.
I like it quite a bit as well. I'm not coming in quite as high. I'm giving it an 8.
Okay.
But that is higher than what I would rate the original Metropolis game. I think the mechanisms, except for the numbering thing, leaving that outside of the discussion, I think every change they made here mechanically is a slam dunk. I really do. The original game, the biggest fault it had is it got old quickly. The scoring conditions were repetitive. You kind of did the same things, every
Right.
game. And in this one, I feel that between the set collecting, between your special building and its unique power that you decide later in the game what it's going to do, how it's going to, score or manifest some rule, it's going to stay livelier for a longer time. I do remember the original game got a lot of garbage for the board not being very clear, which I thought was very funny because I thought it was fine. This board is actually it's blurrier and kind of hard to see the spaces sometimes. So there you go. I guess be careful what you wish for. But yeah, I do like it. Mechanically, this is a more robust game. I'm giving it an 8.
And I like the game quite a bit, but I'm only giving it a 7. Only. I'm recommending the game. I'm giving it a 7. That's a good score, first of all. Let me, put that to rest. The thing that kind of works against it for me is that there are other games that do similar things that I would always choose over, well, the original Metropolis and also this version of the game. One is a very clear analog to this game, and a couple other ones are kind of what I want to use for points of comparison. Well, first, Raw, my favorite game of all time. That to me has just the best bidding system out there. So even though it's not an area control game, I tend to think of that. Another one that's a little bit of a stretch would be Rumble Nation, which is a game from Hobby Japan. That is a area control type game that gives me similar feels. But the biggest analog to this game would be Big Shot, which is an older Alex Randolph design that to me is very much like this game, but even simpler and even more tense and focused on each of those kind of bids. So it's a really fine game. Roxley knocked the production out of the park, but it's just that there are other games that I'm always going to choose to play over this that give me very similar feels.
So there you go, folks. That is a spread of scores, with the high score being an 8.5. So therefore, this game is getting a seal of excellence. Certainly a lovely production. Maybe it might be a game for you. That should give you enough information to decide if indeed it is one you want to add to your collection. And that's going to do it. Thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Joey Evans.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
Launch your cities into the sky.
Hey, everybody.
everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you, and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vasel.